Come on. It takes the time to load. There we go. Oh, premium account on X is required in order to stream on the platform. What do you mean? Go live. We do have an account on X. Oh, okay. So we're just learning things as we go. That apparently Twitter doesn't like it. You now need a premium account on X to be able to stream. I did not know this.
Wow.
Premium account on X is required in order to stream live on the platform. You can subscribe.
Elon
Interesting.
Musk.
Elon Musk is starting to charge to stream on there. Right. Okay. Well, we'll bail on that one. I'll just have to put out a cheeky little post on Twitter then, because that's not very fair that they don't get access to it. But how's everyone going? Hope you're all doing well. As we just look at some technical difficulties live in action. It's just how live shit works. But hope everybody is doing well. Grok, welcome, mate. How's it going?
Yeah, going well. Been busy back at work. And my sister had a baby last week, so I've been busy with sort of baby furniture the past week and everything. Work, paperwork, everything. It's been a busy period, which is obviously why I wasn't here last week. But no, good to be back.
Very good. Congratulations to your sister and the family. It's amazing news, and it's good to hear that everything's going well.
Absolutely. Foot's okay at the moment, Kylie. Still in the moon boot, but I tweaked it again last Saturday.
Did you really?
Bed. So So getting into bed, I sort of twisted the wrong way and something popped, and I woke up on Sunday morning in some agony. So yeah, it's still a little. It's okay. But every now and then, the cold weather, it's been achy a little bit. But yeah, again, it's got to get through it.
Yeah, cold weather can be a killer for those type of injuries.
And it just sucks because obviously working and everything, like it's not one of those ones that you can really just rest. So you got to, obviously life gets in the way. So obviously I've had work and everything. I just haven't really had a chance to get off it.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's the foot's one of the worst injuries. You just not take for granted, but you just use it for everything. So it's very, very easy to re-injure. But no, hopefully that starts to heal sooner rather than later. At least it wasn't a bad tweak. At least you didn't sort of re-fall dangerously to hurt it again.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm thinking I need to go back to the doctors because it's the left ankle, but my right hand shin just below my kneecap there's still a relatively decent sized lump that's extremely tender still. So I might have to get that looked at as well.
Get it checked out. All right, before we get into, it's kind of tied into the game, but obviously news come out tonight about Toby Bedford getting 3 weeks for his tackle on Tim Taranto. Taranto obviously left unconscious, and I know that what I'll say might go against the grain and might not be what people like or want to hear, but that's okay. I'm happy to wear it. I just think 3 weeks for that's excessive. I always thought it was going to be a week because he knocked him out. It wasn't a sling tackle. There wasn't two motions. I know that he's got onus to protect him if you pin both the arms, and that's where he went wrong. I just feel that outcome is sometimes too heavily based as the determining factor. Like, I would have thought at minimum a week because he was knocked out. Maybe 2 you could probably wear. But I think when you start looking at 3 up, I reckon that's when we're talking about sling tackles or big dump tackles that then result in concussion. With a bit more intent behind it. And then not to forget that Dangerfield got off a very similar incident only a fortnight ago, if that. Now, I can't fully remember if the player Danger tackled got knocked out or not, but I just think when things like that happen and then the same incident happens a couple of weeks later, that's where the AFL create problems. Well, not so much the AFL, but the MRO creates problems for himself.
Yeah, I think I'm personally of the opinion that contact with the ground is going to happen. It's a contact sport. You get tackled. If the tackler is not ready, obviously the head. There's a chance that it's hitting the ground. So I don't like this precedent of players executing tackles and then getting suspended just because the heads hit the ground. It's again, dignity of risk. Players know that that's a chance that their head's going to hit the ground if they get tackled. The only time I do believe that a suspension should be warranted from a tackle is if it's a blatant like sling or dump tackle. Someone like Bedford's tackle, and even Charlie Cameron's, where he tackled him from the front and he's fallen backwards. That was 3 weeks as well, and I think that's just. I think the rule is broken in that way. Like there's got to be some. I think the AFL have gone too far in trying to protect the head, where reasonable outcomes are now being punished. Like you can't call them perfect tackles because the AFL won't call them perfect if head contact's made with the ground. But again, it's all random. Like some players will brace for the tackle and they'll clench and their head will be stiff. Others who aren't expecting it, their necks aren't tense and their head hits. I just think it's a raffle, and unless it's a blatantly obvious dump, sling, or dangerous tackle, I think there needs to be some leeway in players getting concussed. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and not saying that they shouldn't not get a week. Like someone said before, what about the week Taranto misses? And I agree that it should be. I always thought it should have been at least one because he did knock him out, and there is the duty of care because the arms were pinned. But I think you got to have a look at the intent a little bit as well. Like it wasn't like what Brody did, when he sort of lifted up and dumped. There was no double action or anything like that. I just think there's a little bit of common sense that needs to come into play. I'd be saving, the 3 week ones for those as a starting point for those pick up dump tackles or those 2 motion sling tackles, because you've got intent to cause damage. So then you're starting at a higher baseline. And then if there's injury as a result of it, then you go up from there. But it's, I've always had a gripe with the MRO basing it fully on outcome and not factoring in other things as well. And look, obviously we don't want Timmy Taranto to be injured naturally, but I just thought 3 was awfully harsh. And it's going to be fascinating to see if they appeal this based on the Dangerfield one. I know, I think the player he kept playing was Walsh, kept playing. But it's going to be interesting.
The one thing that I believe should happen is it should be 1 week for the actual action, and then however many weeks that the player's out injured, that's what you tack on to the tackle. So if Taranto misses 1 week through concussion but's back next fortnight, then that's an extra week on Bedford.
Yeah. But exactly right.
You look at the Collingwood game where Nick Dacos got absolutely slung tackled from the collar, like literally just whipped, and nothing happened because his head didn't hit the ground. But if that had happened and he got concussed, you're probably looking at a 6 week tackle for that one, and that's where I think it's broken.
And it's interesting how much football's changed over the years. Like I think back to when I was playing juniors, which is only 20-something odd years ago, that the technique, all juniors at these guys' age or maybe slightly less who have come through, you're always told pin the arms and drop your knees. Yep. And it's something that everyone's been taught and trained for so long all through their junior career that now I just think sometimes that we're expecting a bit too much of the players in that moment. Like it's such a split-second, high-paced game. And like taking out the malice ones aside, but for genuine just footy acts that end up being accidents, I think we're expecting them to weigh up far too many things in such a split-second moment.
Yeah. As Dylan just mentioned, the AFL rules specifically specify run-down tackles. But that's the case with tackles. Like if you're running a player down and you tackle from behind, the likelihood is they're going forward. You have to have the wherewithal, if you're doing a rundown tackle, to grab them and then stop and pull yourself backwards in order to avoid it. And for such a split-second decision, I don't think that's a reasonable call for a player to be able to make in that split second. Like, I think that in rundown tackles, again, if players don't want to be tackled and potentially concussed, I think the onus needs to be a bit more on the player with the ball to be more aware of their surroundings and the teammates around them to ensure that they're getting the ball off in time as well. I just think
it's interesting.
All the blame being put on the tackler and the tackling technique. Well, the player with the ball's also out there and he knows that he's a chance of getting tackled. He needs to take some responsibility for not being quick enough to get the ball away as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Plenty of discussion points around that, no doubt. Good to see some, all the varying opinions come through. We love it. Onto the game itself, the Giants knocked us off by 24 points, 17-6, 108 to 12-12, 84. At the risk, I don't want this to sound condescending in any way, but 24 points actually wasn't too bad of an outcome, all things considered. It probably felt like we were in it for a little bit, and then as what's happened in the last few games, it just sort of took a quarter and a bit for them to get going. But Jesus, they look dangerous. The big standout for me, especially early days, was as competitive as we were, that the moment we turned it over in their front half of the ground, in our front half of the ground, the way they moved it like through the middle, and we were just pedestrians, it was scary.
Yeah. We had one more scoring shot, so we're getting the shots on the board. It's just, again, inaccuracy and missing gettable shots is what's doing us in. But yeah, our inability to defend the corridor, like, it's become blatantly obvious now that teams are taking that 45 into the middle because they know we're slow on transition. I mean, the way that the Giants transitioned the ball from their back line, and even when they were doing the snap passes from the boundary hemmed in, they were taking uncontested marks out, top of the goal square with no player within 5 meters of them, and it's just poor, lazy defending. And I think, honestly, that's probably the worst our back line has set up defensively in probably the last 2 months, I reckon. Our defenders have been pretty solid over the past couple of months, but I think Miller especially had a dirty game. I don't think Miller was great at all. I think he was poor.
Yeah, Broad, a bit of a shocker.
Yeah, Broad wasn't great either. Bolter had his moments, but it's one of those ones where our midfield actually stepped up this week, and our forwards. It was almost our defenders that let us down this week as opposed to normally our midfield or our forwards. I thought we worked pretty well up forward. Obviously, I thought Cozzy had a decent game. He's starting to work into it. Mansell was really, really good. Again, it's just the poor conversion rate. Obviously, I think Cozzy should have had 4.
He missed a couple of sitters, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which hurt.
I thought Mansell's impact up forward was really, really good. Hugo had an absolute ripper as well.
Yeah, Hugo was good.
It was just I think it was a lot of our older players. Again, we've been saying it all year, but it's our older players. Short had a really dirty game. Rioli had some absolutely shocking what the hell moments. It was a strange one, but I think the fact that we scored 84 points, obviously scoring's been a big issue for us.
Yeah,
over this year. The fact that we outscored them in scoring shots, again, positive sign. Banks looked solid. I do agree, Jones. But yeah, again, it's just little things. One area we tweak and it improves, and then another area goes backwards. There's just no consistency. But yeah, again, positive signs to work with. I think we've all wanted to see some form of game plan. The one thing that I did notice was, again, we're still rushing too quickly. I think we do believe that counter-attack is our best chance of scoring, but sometimes we've gone too quickly and missed that simple 2 or 3 meter handball to a player who hasn't been expecting it or giving it to players under pressure. So I do think we still need to find that balance between going quickly and knowing when to slow down and regain pressure, retain possession, just sort of compose ourselves.
Looking at the goal kickers, big shout out to Steely Green, who bobbed up with 3 goals, 11 disposals, 4 marks, 2 tackles. I'm super pumped for him, just on the back of how awfully managed his debut was a few weeks ago, a sub for 4 or 5 minutes. For him to bob, he actually almost single-handedly got us back into the game late in the piece. He just found himself in the right spot, right time. So I was really, really happy for Steely. I thought he was quite good. Mansell 2 goals, Kazitsi 2, Bolton 2, Samson Ryan 1, Dan Rioli 1, and Liam Baker 1. So it's hurts to have lost, but I think there was a few more positives to take out of that one than other weeks. But Yeah, Cozzy, that one hurt. The two behinds and the one out in the full, you kick some of those in those crucial moments and it starts to look like a bit of a different game.
Yeah, Ross, I agree with you on that Baker being taken without the ball, one at the top of the goal square.
Oh, my
That
goodness.
that would have gotten us to within 13 points. Instead, it's gone down the other end, and they've scored a goal from it, and it's now gone out to 25. It was a two goal swing right there, and that was at the end. That was the end of the game. That was absolutely a horrible decision.
Screaming at the TV when that happened. Looking at the disposal winners, it's no surprise that our top three disposal getters were Hopper 28, Taranto 27, and Prestia 27. You just look at those three, and it just highlights like we have missed those three in our side for huge portions of the year. And it's not a coincidence that we start to play better and get a bit closer and are in games for longer when they're playing it and running a pretty good ship there in the midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. We were actually winning ball. And that's the biggest thing. They smashed us early in clearances and contested possession, but I believe we ended up winning both of those counts. We were ahead in both contested and clearances at the end of the game, which for a midfield that the Giants have, obviously Tom Green, Steve Cornelio, it's a massive achievement, especially given that Prestia, Hopper, and Taranto, they're underdone. They haven't had that full season of fitness that the Giants players have. So I think that was a fantastic effort. The one thing that I still do have knocks on is the Giants midfield isn't quick. They're very much a one-pace midfield as well. My concern with our midfield is when we come up against the sides that do have that line-breaking burst of speed on the outside. I still think that's a worry for us. But yeah, I think this is probably Prestia's best game for the year. This is he's been. I've been pretty vocal that I think he's cooked. But yeah, I still don't think he'll be there next year. But I think he's just easing his way into it and protecting some of the younger kids.
Speaking of younger kids, the one I want to talk about is Tyler Sonzi. He only had the 3 disposals, 1 tackle, 2 marks, and it's not to hang him out to dry, but I feel like we're getting awfully close to crossroads with him, and I'm just not sure if he's being able to be played in the right position because unquestionably, if he gets dropped this week, he'll go back to the VFL and probably get 20 to 25 touches and look $1 million in the midfield. But it's just not clicking for him for whatever reason at AFL level, and I just don't know. I don't quite know why.
Yeah, I'm not sure on Sonzi. I do think that his kicking has been overblown a little bit. I don't think he's as great a kick as people think. I think he's a nice kick, but I don't think he's a great kick. For a supposedly elite kick, he misses easy targets far too often. But he's the type of player who should be doing that Lambert transition role from midfield to forward, delivering the ball. That should be what he should be aiming for. But for whatever reason, it's just not clicking, and I'm not sure if that's whether he just doesn't have the physical desire to compete or anything like that. He's coming across to me as another Corey Ellis, as that midfielder that we bring in because we knew he had skills, but just lacks that physical competitiveness which midfielders need in this day and age.
Yeah, I really want him to make it because he seriously has the tools. I just made me feel like he's a little bit lost or just unsure of his position within the team and how to execute his role. But I'd love to see him get some more midfield minutes, but it's so hard because we've been screaming out to get the experienced guys back in there to bolster us up. But yeah, it'd be nice to find some balance there. I'm more than happy for him to still be playing next year for sure, because I think there's still a bit more to find out with him. But I think he just needs to get a bit more confidence back and maybe have another crack at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely worried for him going into next season because as a midfield, we're gonna have Ross back. We're gonna have McAuliffe's gonna have a preseason under his belt. His fitness will be better. I'm not sure where he fits in there. And then forward, we're gonna have Morris Rioli Jr. back. Obviously, he's competing with Steely Green. Juddy Clark will be available halfway through next year, so I'm not sure where he fits in as a forward either. I think that he's the one that sort of got off to that fast start and then has sort of plateaued, and the others are just continuing to improve. So I'm not sure where he goes next year.
Now, Trezise, it's hard to judge Trezise on very limited game time, but I would love to see for the rest of the year Trezise get a couple of full-blown games. And I thought Banks was pretty good as well. I didn't mind Banks' game. So I think now, yeah, we just got to keep trying to get some more games into these kids before the year's out and just see what a few of them have got.
Yeah, I would like to see Smith back in. I think we did him a little bit dirty in the one game that he played. And Short's form, again, it's been an issue all year. I'm not sure why Short is playing at the moment, but yeah, I would like to see Caleb Smith back in.
Tom Brown is a good one from Julie. Just as a reminder, is a must keep in. I don't know whether it was just if it was my eyes deceiving me or not, but it felt like he was getting a little bit further up the ground at various stages. There was a couple of times he was delivering inside 50, and they were absolute lasers, and we actually just put the mark down. We just dropped it all. There was a bit of miscommunication from the forwards, but I really liked him delivering the ball inside 50 to our forwards. I wouldn't mind seeing that a bit more often.
He actually played up forward for a brief stint. There was like 3 or 4 minutes where he was actually a marking target for us at centre half forward. So I don't mind that move. I think that his kicking and obviously his overhead marking will be a weapon, especially if like we bring Blight in. Maybe it's Blight that comes in. Brown goes forward as that marking tall, because I mean, you look at Brown. I'm not sure what Brown could offer us. I'm not sure that there's much difference between what Brown offers us at AFL level and what Cumberland would. I mean, Cumberland's been tried and tested, and we know what he's delivering. Why not play Brown there for a couple of games and see what he can do?
Yeah, exactly right. You've got to roll the dice and move some deck chairs around to try and get a result. So, and if he's getting the ball 80 metres out, kicking it to our forwards, I would say that 9 times out of 10 it's going to hit the right bloke. So that's a genuine win in itself. Cumberland's papers stamped. Part of me feels like they are, and I know this has no bearing on the actual outcome, but he is such a nice bloke. Like, we actually met him the other day at the club for one of the rookie functions, and yeah, he was really, really nice and great with the kids. And I'm like, I wish he could have got it together, because again, similar to Sonzi, you can see there's times where he's got the tools, he just hasn't been able to unlock it for whatever reason. So if it is time for him, I hope that he can unlock it somewhere else, just not against us.
Yeah, no, I think he's gone. Some players have all the talent in the world, but just can't get it together mentally. I think that I think that he's going to be another one like Dan Connors that just doesn't have that mental resilience and that consistency to be able to as a consistent player.
And one of the other questions that the players at this function were asked, they were asked if you had to pick someone to kick a goal after the siren to win you a game from 35, 40 metres, who would you pick? And Bolter, without hesitation, said Bauer, because he's obviously done it a couple of times before, and then it sounds like he bobbed up and kicked another goal on the weekend. So maybe he gets a look in soon, Bauer.
Yeah, Bauer kicked 3 on the weekend.
3 was it on the weekend?
Yeah,
okay.
3. So yeah, he's another one. Like, I think he's the only one who's fit on our list besides Oliver Hayes-Brown that hasn't played AFL this year. So
we might as well keep talking about the VFL. What a super job. I know we say it week in, week out, so apologies for it being like a broken record, folks, but you've got to take your hats off to Steve Morris and the crew for getting the job done again against the reigning premiers nonetheless, in pretty convincing fashion in the end. Huge respect to them. What they've been able to do is quite remarkable. But Hayes Brown, or the snack pack as they call him, which still makes me laugh. A lot of people, probably a lot of non-Richmond people, have been asking, are we going to see him soon? I don't think he's going to be physically ready to come in and play AFL level. Like, the numbers look great at VFL, but it wasn't that long ago that he was playing in the VAFA, and we sort of recalled him up to the VFL. But it's very good progression nonetheless. But Bauer, I hope, is the next man in.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against, let's say, round 23, last game of the season. I wouldn't be against giving Nank that week off. Just be like, look, you've battled all year. Chuck Hayes Brown in, give him a game, get him used to set the standard. Be like, this is what you need. This is what the standard of AFL is. Go out and do your best. I mean, he can't do any worse than what Samson Ryan was on debut.
Oh, that was a very unlucky game for Samson, that debut game.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be against giving Hayes Brown a game towards the end of the year just so he knows what the level is and where he needs to get to give him some motivation in the off season. And plus, I mean, if everyone else has been getting games for the sake of it, because to be honest, there have been players who have come in from the VFL who haven't deserved it. I mean,
we haven't had much choice, have we?
May as well give him a taste. I mean, there's not much to lose in a season that's all about trying for the future.
Yeah, I think the good thing for him is that he's been showing some consistent form. Like, it wasn't like he just got those 40-odd taps that hit outs a few weeks ago and then sort of did nothing for 3 weeks. Like, it's actually been a pretty good block of work by him to keep winning the ruck contest and showing some good signs. So it's got me excited to see what he sort of progresses like. Obviously, we had Kalina as well as a tall player that hasn't worked out because of his back stress fractures. But this one might. You never know. This one might.
100%.
And a few people asking about Samson Ryan. I think the club they've categorically backed him in by giving him the 3-year contract. So they obviously see him as a big part of the mid to long term plans at the very least. Whether that's a takeover from Nank or whether that's playing as a forward, I'm kind of still not too sure, to be honest. But Samson Ryan, is definitely featuring very heavily in the club's plans, just on the base of the contracts being offered.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's more a show of faith as opposed to output, because by the time his contract finishes, he'll be 27. And at that point, I think that's where he would have been on the list 7 years. And if he hasn't shown consistently enough by the end of 2026, there's every chance that we trade him with 1 year left to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be surprised if Ryan's still on our list at the end of that 3-year contract, unless he absolutely improves massively.
Yeah. A few people talking up Steve Morris, rightfully so. Where do we see him at the club? I mean, Cameron's made a good point that he'll be headhunted by some AFL clubs as an assistant, undoubtedly on the back of his work this year. I'm assuming that we would be also potentially asking the question for him to step up as an assistant of some kind. But then it comes back to our conversation last week that Uzaid needs to have the men around him that he wants as well. So there's probably a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I definitely think there's merit in keeping Morris at the club. Obviously, the VFL is the breeder program for the AFL. We need both teams playing a similar game style, structure, so they know exactly what their role is going to be at AFL level. So for me, there's definitely a role for Morris at the club. And even if it's just a player development role, obviously we lost Xavier Clark last year, who was in that role. So yeah, I wouldn't, if he's not coaching VFL, I reckon he'll step into that player development role.
Well, yeah, from Damien, Morris won't leave Richmond. He has stated this publicly. He loves the club and wants Richmond to be successful. That's always pleasing to hear. And as RFC said as well, he has done some runner duties on game day as well, which is always good to get him out there sending out the messages. But we need to at this stage. He's one of the need to keep at all costs. So Morris, again, hats off to you, mate. You're doing an absolute killer job down there. I
mean, in regards to a rebuild of the list, having having a decent reserves coach is one of the most important things.
For sure. Yeah.
So
it doesn't work unless it happens all the way down.
yeah.
Is there any movement on this, Nick, the CEO appointment? I've not really heard anything else in this space, but yeah, interesting to hear if anything else is in the pipeline. All right, we'll push on to the Port Adelaide game, and then maybe we'll talk about Cameron while you're here, because I've seen you pop in the chat. Even if you've got some info on the champs games that happened recently and some plays which you maybe keep an eye out for, besides the more obvious ones, feel free to sing some out. But we've got Port Adelaide this week, going to be a big challenge. I mean, Power are a pretty up and down team, though, aren't they? At the moment, they're winning some games they should, losing some games they shouldn't. But they are fighting for their life essentially to stay inside the 8 Grok. So that always rings alarms bells for me when they come up against a side like Richmond. They probably feel like we're right for the killing. But for some reason, when our backs are up against the walls, we've typically had some okay games against Port Adelaide, but this one could be a little bit trickier to win than usual.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's all on the line for Ken Hinkley. I mean, obviously,
could it be a coach killer?
Absolutely. The rumours are that he was given till the end of the season to improve, but apparently the board ran thin after the game against Gold Coast. So, there's every chance that if we knock Port Adelaide off this week, and that's a very big if, that Hinkley's gone by this time next week.
You reckon that would be? I mean, you'd say that's a feather in your cap if you're able to do that. That would be massive. I mean, they're ninth, but we all know how close that sort of from 4th all the way through to about 13th is. Do you reckon they'll be nervous? Like, I know for all intents and purposes, list versus list in our current sort of state, they should probably feel comfortable enough to get this job done. But do you reckon there's an element of like this could go wrong?
Yeah, I reckon Uze this week is going to be pumping up the boys, saying that they're wounded, like the Port are wounded. Like right now, they're missing Powell Pepper. What Wines is slowing down. Butters has been hit and miss. Rosie's been hit and miss. Horn Francis has been hit and miss over the last 5-6 weeks. Their midfield is they either dominate or they don't give a shot. So, I mean, with the way our midfield played on the weekend, I think there's a massive chance that we can knock them off.
So looking at some of the players that we're going to have to battle against, obviously Alir, very good defender in his own right, and Dan Houston down back as well. But maybe there's a chance to sort of stretch him a little bit for height. Is Radigalia back in anytime soon? What was his? I can't remember why he was out. If he was a long-term injury or not. But this is where you need, like, Alir is, as I said, a very, very good marker of the ball. And you just need to keep him accountable. Whether that's Kazitsky's job, whether that's Samson Ryan's job, whoever it is, we just can't let him mark the ball at will, because if we do that, we're going to struggle to kick a score. But if the boys can just be at least competitive, and that was probably one thing I noticed against the Giants, is there were still a few times where we would kick the ball inside 50 and none of the tools were going for it, and they would just stand there and take an uncontested mark, which is infuriating. I feel like that's an easy thing to fix. It's literally just a communication thing. And if we can do that, I think we'll go a long way to winning. But then, you've got the midfield of Wines. Butters will roll through there. Horn Francis, Rosie. I mean, when they're on, they're very good. And unfortunately for us, they tend to all play a lot better at home than they do away.
Yeah. Radigalia is listed as a test on the AFL side. Obviously, this was from last Tuesday, so he'll be fit. Burton is another one who should be fit. For us, there's a chance that we've got Morris back. He's listed as 1 to 2 weeks away from last week, so he'll be maybe a test this week. Pickett, probably the same.
If Morris Rioli Jr. is fit to go, would you bring him in? And if so, who for? Because I think he and Mantle's pressure, I think, works well together.
Yeah, I'd bring him in only for the simple fact the way that GWS moved the ball against us out of the back line. I do think we need another runner in there. And we talked about him earlier, but if that's the case, Sonzi comes out.
Well, and Taranto
Sonzi's
will be out as well if he's in concussion protocol.
but
He'll miss anyway.
got Dusty.
Will they fly him over though?
I don't see why they wouldn't.
Because was he close to playing on the weekend against the Giants with his back? Was that listed as a test?
He was listed as a test last week.
Okay, well, I mean, if Dusty's fit to go and Taranto's out, then that's probably one change. And I would be all for bringing in Morris Jr. To wreak havoc in the forward line if he's fit to go. Like, we obviously don't want to pull the trigger too soon on that. But this is a good point as well from Ben that Todd Marshall is out injured as well. That is a horrible way to do your hamstring. For those who didn't see it, Charlie Dixon fell over him and pretty much bent his leg up to over his head. And that's how he injured himself. It's a shit way to do it. But, so a few people saying MJ for Sonzi. I think I'm still keeping McIntosh in. I know a few people tonight have been sort of calling McIntosh, but he even played a bit of a forward role this week as well, which is something a little bit different. But I still think there's no one really pushing him out of that spot on the wing. And we'll all say this one week, right? And then he'll come out against Port Adelaide and have all these massive second, third, and fourth efforts, half contests, and do everything that we want him to do.
Yeah. I mean, even if Dusty's not right, I'd like to see Bolton push up into the middle. I think that's where he's doing his best work this year, is as a midfielder. What
was the outcome with Bolton? There was a little bit of speculation that he might have hurt his groin in one of the contests late in the game. Was he fully cleared? Is he okay?
Yeah, he was back on after that. They were worried about it, but then he had a contest and at the half forward line like 10 minutes later, and he looked all right.
That's good.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm happy to go against both URFC Centre and J Tiger. Structure-wise, Camden McIntosh is one of the most important players in our team. I know we're not playing very well, but if you can't acknowledge the work rate and the stuff he does without the ball, you've got to watch him a bit closer than just the disposal count, fellas. He will be one of the first picked each week, I can promise you. That's good that Bolton come back on, though. I did see him come back on, but I didn't know whether it was one of those ones that when they cool down is it going to start flaring up and being worse than what it was. Ruck-wise, I mean, Soldo is obviously still out. Sweet young ruckman. I think I've maybe undervalued how good Nank's season's been so far. And I want to just give a shout out to Nank while we're on the ruck topic that he's had a super month, maybe even 6 weeks worth of football at the moment. And I don't want to jinx it, but for the first time in a long time, I reckon this is the longest consecutive amount of games he's played for us for a while, like without suspension, without injury, anything like that. And he has been an absolute power. And I think he's going to go very, very well against Jordan Sweet this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon Nang's probably, given that Vlosten's had a few quiet weeks now, as has Rioli, I reckon Nang's probably in front in the Jack Dyer medal. I think he's probably got it at this point. He's been easily our best and most consistent player throughout this season. But then again, we've thought that about various other players, and the coaches have seen it differently to us over the past few years anyway. So, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, Nank's been an absolute weapon. I think having someone a big body, obviously having Naismith early on before he did his knee, I think it allowed Nank to get those rests and breaks in when he's needed. And then obviously having Cozzy, who's been able to go through the ruck for a big chunk of games as well, has certainly helped.
Now, Port Adelaide got obviously a fairly star-studded lineup with Wines, Horn Francis, Rosie, and Butters, as we mentioned before. It was noticeable that Graham has been doing a bit more of a run-with role again, which he's not unfamiliar with, which is good. If you had to pick one of them to send a player to, who are you sending him to? Because it just feels like when teams do this, the other one gets off the chain, whether it's Butters or Rosie. But I think you've got to try and put time into at least one of them. I don't think we can. I don't think we can just let them all run free.
Yeah, I'd probably go Butters, only for the simple fact that Rosie often drifts out of games by himself, whereas
I think
Butters
Butters is more prone to hurt on the scoreboard too.
Yeah, Butters is also consistently in and around the ball. So I think Rosie's probably the easier one to shut down, but I think Butters is the one that if you do shut him down, Port struggle. But I mean, if we're talking about a player that we need to have someone go with, we need someone like MJ for Houston. Houston is
That's a good call.
Is the number one player that we need to shut down. He sets them up from defense and forward of center really well. So through the midfield, it's probably Rosie and Butters, but their most important player, in my opinion, is Houston.
He sets everything up. He's like their quarterback, isn't he? In some way. If Mansell's fit to play, I wouldn't give Morris Rioli the job on Houston first game back. I would let Mansell have a crack at it and try and hurt him the other way. I think Mansell's more inclined to be a lot more physical with Houston, and it might put him off his game a bit. Because he and Kane Farrell, who's probably a little bit of an unsung hero for them, not hero, but he can also get dangerous. He's a very, very nice long kick of the ball too. So similar to Jaden Short, that if they've got guys marking it on their range, we've got to keep an eye out for Farrell looping around the back, getting a cheeky handball and smashing one home. But yeah, I think there could be a little bit of double tagging role. So yeah, we'll have to put someone on Houston, someone on Butters, and then maybe Graham has to swap onto Rosie if he gets off the chain as well. Horn Francis, do we go head to head with him? Just let someone go head to head and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Farrell, the campaign, has actually done that the last 3 games against us, where he's looped around and kicked from 50. I think last game we played, I think he did it twice to us, kicked 2 long range goals.
Got to be aware of it.
Definitely need to be aware of it. I mean, we've got Steely Green, who's been a bit of a pest at VFL level, who has some niggle in him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him going some players. And I think in terms of midfield, I think Baker's the one that goes head to head with Horn Francis.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I am mindful of this as well, Cameron, about those who are in our Supercoach sides. I think I've got Butters, so I'm probably in the tag Rosie camp at the moment. But yeah, it's going to be. Look, I don't know. Just on they get Georgiades back as well. Was he a 1-week suspension or was he longer?
I'm not sure.
But it's just one of those weird things, isn't it? That, like I said, whenever we've had our backs up against the wall, we've typically come out and played well against Port Adelaide, and ultimately it's going to take the senior players to actually play at a really good level for more than a quarter to help get us over the line. So I know a lot of people are sort of asking questions about Baker in here, Grock, about did he have a bit of a dirty game? Did he look disinterested? What did you make of Baker's game, and where do you think he needs to take it to for this one?
I thought it was poor. I mean, I'm not going to mince my words. Outside of the first goal of the game, I think it was all downhill for Bakes from there. I mean, he just didn't compete the way that we expect him to. There was no hunger to win the ball. There was no hunger to chase or tackle. Again, he just looked lazy. Like, there was really no pressure on the ball carrier. I thought he was poor. And for someone who's supposedly the next captain of the club, I look at that game and I look at Taranto's game, and I think Taranto's probably a better suit for captain. I think Taranto's probably, for me, the one that is best suited for it.
So the obvious thing that will start to happen, when you acknowledge that Baker's had a poor month, is the questions then start to come up. Is it because he's checked out? Is he injured? What do you reckon it's an element of? I'm still not fully sold that he's leaving yet, just on the back of what Tig said. And I know a lot of people are quite the other way, but I would be disappointed if he leaves and his form now is as a result of him being checked out. That would be disappointing because that just sort of lacks professionalism. And I would like to think he's not like that. And again, I know this bears no relevance to on-field whatsoever, but he was at that function the other day as well. And he was very positive and upbeat with everyone there. And I would hate to think how many people asked him if he was staying or going. But I thought, I know it's a small thing, it's a trivial thing, but I did take a little bit of comfort seeing him still happy and engaging with supporters on a day where he probably didn't want to, no one wants to really have to hang around after work hours to do that stuff. But yeah.
I mean, I think I still firmly believe, and everything that I've heard is that he is gone. I think that the fact that he's isn't committing hard enough in contests or trying as hard as he normally would, I think that's probably just because his head's so cluttered with everything going on, like the decision. He's got to finalise it one way or another. He's got to think about how he's going to tell the coach, the players, the decision either way. I think he's got a lot on his mind. So, yeah, we saw how it affected Brett Deledio. We've seen how pressures like this have affected far more talented players than Baker. So, I mean, I do think, there's probably a reason for his drop in form, and I think it's all purely psychological. I think it's all a mental thing for him with everything that he's been balancing. And you're right, all the question marks about, is he staying, is he going, from reporters, from fans, probably from even the boys around the club. The joke, no doubt there'll be joke comments made about it. We don't know Liam. We don't know how he takes these sorts of things. But I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that all of this is affecting him.
Yeah, well, up his mind, it would be a bit of a torturous one. But all I'll say is, Jason, be careful what you wish for where you go with things like that, because the proof is in the pudding with some of the mail. And if it does turn out that he stays, I promise you're going to get hit right between the eyes. But yeah, if he's legitimately undecided, yeah, as much as you'd love to put it to one side, we've still got games to try and win, and a lot of our performance hedges on how the experienced players play. So that's just the reality of where we're at as a club. And he needs to be one of those players leading that example. And on the flip side, you've got Tim Taranto, I think it was reported last week maybe, that he off his own back is going around to some of these players who maybe are a bit undecided about their futures, trying to, word them up and convince them to stay, which I thought was really interesting. And I suppose the unknown for us, Brock, was how was he and Hopper going to react to the Dimmer leaving, given he was such a big part of why they come across in the first place.
Absolutely. And maybe that's another dimension to the whole Baker thing, is the rumours about Simpson over the past 3 or 4 weeks about when's he going to leave. I mean, the fact that West Coast don't have a senior coach for next year, that's obviously clouding things, especially a week after it came out that he's already said no to Freo. I mean, it's now down to West Coast or Richmond at this stage. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that's clouded his decision. But yeah, I mean, Taranto for me, I think he speaks better in the media than what Baker does. I think the role that he plays is also more conducive to being a captain, whereas Baker's one of these ones who leads by inspirational moments, not so much over the course of a game, but that one hard tackle or that one courageous, like going back into a contest sort of thing. I think Taranto does that, has all the captains, like the Cochin sort of lead by example, but also really well spoken, whereas Baker's that one that may not be the captain, but he makes other players walk taller with him, because that he's not going to let you go half-hearted. He's going to set the example and expects everyone to follow him, sort of thing. And that's two different leadership styles. I think in terms of a rebuild, I definitely think that Taranto is the one that the safe bet that you go with. And the fact that he took the initiative to go around and talk to some of the boys who may be thinking, I don't want to stick around for a rebuild. I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere nice, earning cushy paycheck, that sort of thing. I think that definitely speaks volumes. It's sort of on the level of Cochin's, take pride in the space you have, sort of thing, where he's cleaning up the locker rooms. It's just taking care of the club and the players around you.
No, it was good to hear. It was good to hear. So you can't ask for much more from one of your more senior leaders around the club. All right, before we wrap up, obviously there was the national champs on the weekend, which we all now have a very heavily vested interest in, given our predicament on the ladder. Cameron, I'm probably looking your way, Cameron, in terms of some information here. But the ending was quite remarkable, and it's a lot of people have been talking about Jagger Smith. Now, a lot of people are torn on him as well because he's an accumulator, but I think a lot of people are knocking rightly or wrongly that maybe he's not as damaging with his disposal as others. Smiley, obviously, another one that's in calculation too. And there's one other who I can't remember, was it Finn O'Sullivan?
Finn O'Sullivan.
Yeah, it was another one that's probably featuring heavily too. But keen to hear who people are hoping that we take first and foremost. So let me know in chat. Who do you hope we take if you've got an opinion one way or another?
Did you see the ending of the game?
I did, and I was still trying to work out if it was 50 for encroachment or if it was 50 for abuse.
It was abuse.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But imagine if a grand final was decided like that.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just another time that they've probably interjected themselves into the game, and maybe they didn't need to. But favorite player in the draft, Sam Layla. Okay, now you'll definitely appear on the show. Well, so for those who don't know, I want to blow your cover, Cameron, but Cameron does a lot of scouting stuff for the AFL. So we're going to be getting him onto the show in October to talk about the upcoming draft, because that is his area of expertise, which will be really, really good. So once we lock in that date, I saw you post some dates earlier. We'll definitely get one locked in. We will do all that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who we take. If you got pick one and you got the pick of the lot, I think you still have to go best available, don't you, Grok?
Yeah, and it's weird because there's no clear stand out. I mean, it's not like where it was Jason Horne-Francis, it was Matt Rowell, it was Harley Reid.
Yeah,
there's so many players that could fall into that top three. Obviously, you've got Finn O'Sullivan, you've got Josh Smiley, you've got Jagger Smith, and they've all got their strengths. Obviously, O'Sullivan's probably the more well-rounded of the three. Smith is the accumulator. He gets a lot of ball, and Smiley's that big contested clearance-winning midfielder, but he lacks the tank. So I'm not sure. And given that we've got McAuliffe, who lacks the tank, I'm not sure that we do go Smiley, only for the simple fact there's no point having two developing big contested clearance-winning midfielders who can't run a game out. I think that's just putting us behind the eight ball and setting us further back by doing so. So I think we definitely want to get someone who can come in and have an impact almost straight away. And of the two, it's probably Smith or O'Sullivan. But I'm with Cameron on Layla. He's definitely my favourite, and he's this year's Dusty comparison. He's a very, very strong player, upper body strength, can fend off, a neat kick, gets involved, hits teammates up, can hit the scoreboard. So, I definitely, I agree, man. We need someone who can absolutely, So, if I had the pick of any player, I'd be going Layla.
Layla, you've sold me. Now, Damien raised a good point before. If there's no legit gun number one standout like a Harley Reid, like we're sort of just saying, is there value in splitting the number one pick? This is assuming that we still finish last. I know our percentage is getting closer to North Melbourne's, and there's still results that could impact that between both of our clubs. But on the assumption we get the number one pick, is it worth looking to split the pick, not for too higher of round one picks, but if it was like 3-6 or 5-9 or something like. I'm just throwing out random numbers, but is it worth looking at splitting based on the fact there's no clear standout?
I'd definitely do that. I mean, I think Layla's probably not a number one pick at this stage. So I know the club rate Layla highly, and I've been on record saying that Jonty Fall is also on our radar, and I know we really like the way that he competes. So yeah, if we can get a couple of players, someone like Jonty Fall in, Layla in, and one of the three in of O'Sullivan, Smith, or Smiley, I think we'll have done really, really well.
So, just reading a few comments here. Only split it for 3 top 10s, including 2 in the top 5. Yes, it's an interesting prospect, isn't it? It's risk versus reward.
RSC Centre, don't be surprised if Layla pushes up into the top half a dozen by the time the testing comes around. Clubs are really rating him.
All right. Well, with that said, let's have we'll do the tip, including margin for the Port game, and then we'll obviously revisit this draft stuff in a few more weeks' time as well. But who's going to win the Port Adelaide game and by how much? Make sure you send your tips through on the chat as well. We'll put a few up on the screen.
I mean, my heart says that we'll knock them off. But my head reckons that Port over there is going to be too strong. I think Hinkley, again, it's balls to the wall for Hinkley. He has to go hard. So I'm expecting Port to really put us to the sword. I reckon it's probably going to be an 8-goal win to Port.
Yes, it's. I'd love to be. It'd be great to be a coach killer, and just for the Corns factor as well, it would be nice too. But yeah, I think Porter got just too much on the line at the moment. Not just with Hinkley's job, but with them making the 8. Which I mean, to be honest, at the start of the year, I had them as top 2, so that's how far off the mark I've been with them. But I think Port might get us. But I kind of agree with what you said earlier, Grock, that the message could be this week a little bit about that they're right for the picking. They might be a bit battle wounded, and it could be a good chance to pick up a really big scalp.
Georgiades is back this week.
He's back, so he'll be a straight swap for Marshall. So that's that part taken care of. A few people have been asking about a live call this week, and it's something I have wanted to do. It's just tricky with 3 kids. But what are we playing? 7:30 on Saturday night. Leave it with me. I'll try and get something organised because I enjoyed as well. And I don't know, it wasn't this game. It was the Freo game that I think I put out the public apology for having to listen to the horrendous commentary on Fox Footy. We may as well have been listening to the waffle commentary. It was horrible. So we will try and do something like that. I'll speak to the fam and see if we can get some time set aside for 7:30 on the Saturday to try and do that as well. But I haven't had a specific update on EJ. Last I heard, he was going well. CB going well as well. He had a cricket meeting on tonight. And Tiggs was going to be on. He was scheduled to be on tonight, but I think he had his son's birthday yesterday, so he's a bit knackered from that. But they had a good day, which is the most important part. So Tiggs could be back next week.
The feed that Tiggs cooked yesterday, I saw photos on Twitter and it looked fantastic.
Oh, I didn't see his photos. I remember last year he put up like a massive spit roast. Did he do it again, did he?
He did a paella.
Okay.
So, yeah, it looked really, really good.
Oh, the paella. Okay. We'll have to check that out. So hopefully I'll be back on next week. But a few people liking the paella in chat. But thank you for coming on tonight, Grock. Much appreciated. And congratulations again for becoming an uncle. And thanks to everyone for tuning in tonight. Much appreciated. And we will be back on Monday night. And if we do a live call, I'll make sure I give enough notice, to make sure we can kind of get that planned and set up for everybody. So have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you all on Monday. Go Tigers. All right, and up yours, Elon Musk, for not letting us stream on X, you dog.